Hi, this is praios, and I used to be a professional gambler. And today we will look into some 5K, 10K hands on not GG poker, it's coin poker this time. And yeah, we will use this program to help us out if the situations are very tough and we don't know what to do. This is a poker solver, and this is the top-notch technology on how to solve games nowadays. If you want to get this program as well and push your game to the next level, look into my description. You will find a lot of helpful tools to get better in poker. But without further ado, let's get into the action. The original video is from Mr. JNandez. Thank you for that. But without further ado, let's now get into it.
What is up, guys, and welcome back to another video over here on YouTube. Today we will continue the footage on coin poker, covering some of the nosebleed action, playing at 2K, 4K, as well as 5K, 10K in the process of this video, as well as of the series. We have a new face in the ring. HannibalGetya will be the main player in question, who will be playing $1 million pots, crazy $1 million pots, in fact, with a couple of individuals that we already know from the previous episodes. If you guys haven't checked them out, make sure to check out the coin poker series. But without further ado, let's just jump into the action and have a look at what some of these pots tell us about the individuals. So first things first, we got Tony G getting after it with HannibalGetya, who is the enigma essentially when it comes to these games, and also the reason the games are running. And
I didn't watch the content beforehand, but it's already very annoying that I don't see any hole cards. And we want to see hole cards for sure, so why not edit this up front if you make a video about it? This is critic going to JNandez, but looks like these two guys are getting it in. At least one of them has aces probably.
they are starting off with a little casual flip for, what is this, like $500,000, $400,000 almost. Let's have a look what they show up with. So again, these hands are...
Lol. What the... So was this rearrange the flip? I mean, they can't imagine that they would get it in with that otherwise. So they probably agreed beforehand that this is a flip.
Not unintentionally that bad. They are going all in blind just to flip, a little flip for 750k, because why not? So Tony has ace 8-7-3, hits an 8 on the river. It's good against the king queen 4-4. Just a little spice ball to start things off. First pot goes to Tony G.
Getting a little bit deeper. Nice hand. Okay, now the table filled.
So let's jump into the first actual hand. 5-handed game here, 2K, 4K with a 1K ante. And as you can tell in the chat, Tony G is suggesting that they are going to switch the action to the 5K, 10K table, who were actually requested by HannibalGetya, who now limps in on the cutoff. Casually sitting on like $1 million. Got a couple of overlaps.
By the way, this is on Coin Poker. This is a crypto poker site. And yeah, this is Tether, and Tether is pegged to the US dollar. So this is basically the dollar amount you see here. So very, very high stakes.
Limpers and ATAKA is making it 25,000. Some people in the chat were suggesting ATAKA is Trueteller. I have no idea if this is true or not, but those are the rumors. Could make sense based on the playing style, but I don't have any background info. Hannibal with the call.
Johnthefast, not sure if this is the player from PokerStars as well. If it is, then this guy is a fish, but could also be a reg who just borrowed his name.
So he limp calls Johnthefast, who we saw before.
Limp fold is a strange line to take for sure, so it could be the dude.
Or in previous episodes makes the fold, and the small blind Chattahoocheee is also going to fold. Flop is 3, 4, 5. This is a particularly bad board for kind of both ranges, but especially ATAKA. I would say ATAKA's range is probably pretty tight, maybe like 10% or so. And
yeah, I'm not sure if these guys play GTO type hands. But yeah, I would also say that it's probably a maximum 20% of hands, and that should not hit this very well, unless he has like ace-2 or maybe 7 could be in there too somehow. So yeah, but yeah, a board that should be hit very low percentage by ATAKA, maybe a little bit more by Hannibal, but yeah, still not a great one for either of the dudes.
Hannibal could have really anything. I don't really know what his VPIP looks like. It could be 80%, it could be 60 or 40%. But basically 6, 7 or sets or 2 pairs are more likely in.
I think they also had a chat somewhere. I don't remember where I saw that, but Hannibal claimed that he's insanely rich, having like whatever. It was an insane amount. Let me try to remember. I think it was like 10,000 ETH or something, maybe even more. So yeah, he has several millions, like something in the like 50 to 200 million range in ETH, so Ethereum, the second biggest cryptocurrency. But he definitely has having a downswing now, because yeah, declined in value for 66%. So he's having, I mean, if it's net worth is in crypto mainly, then he has lost like 2/3 of his money recently.
His range than ATAKA's range, who's more high card, high pair heavy. So we could see a full range check here by ATAKA. And then Hannibal should go ahead and bet half pot or third pot or 40% of the pot. Basically a small sizing.
Good analysis by Mr. Fernando JNandez.
That allows him to step a wide range of hands, taking advantage of the fact that he does have sets and straights more often. And at the same time, he spreads out the bets over turn and river. So when you're in position, you...
Wow, this is a strange and not that great bet sizing. Standard would be way smaller on this lockdown boards. There is also kind of polarized. So yeah, this is not recommended by GTO, but let's see how this plays out.
are not really incentivized to use these very
definitely committed now.
Large sizings, because you benefit more from being in position by spreading out your bets over all the streets, because then you have the positional advantage on the flop and again on the turn and again on the river, where if you just pot on the flop, you play a one street game, which is minimizing your positional advantage. On top of that, this sizing here is not like, if Hannibal has the nuts in this case, let's say 6, 7, it's obviously not optimizing like the value of his hand, because a lot of medium strong hands will end up folding against this pot size bet. But obviously not this time, because otherwise we wouldn't be looking at this hand. So we will see a jack jam by ATAKA, and let's have a look what this guy shows up with. So ATAKA has ace, ace, 10, 10.
Oh. Wow. Wow. This is insanity. Wow. So attacker not scared with his aces and hands. It has to be close, but I think even if we give Hannibal a very, very loose range, this is probably not correct. Should we do this, chat? Means nobody in there, I think, so see, nobody in there. So yeah, let's just do this for fun. Let me get new window. Cannot use GTO ranges. GTO there's no limping, so let me find the site of Pro Poker Tools. And let's put in, oops, this was, let's put in the hands of the two. We're playing Omaha High. Board is 5 diamond, 4 hearts, 3 clubs. I mean, I think without reads, you should not get it in with ace, ace, 10, 10. But let's see what our analysis will say later. So let's see, has diamond, diamond, and Lapart. Okay, what is Hannibal limping with? Let's say he is limping with 30. Yeah, we don't know how loose this dude is, but the game forms around him and he's playing and people want to play. So let's say he's more of a fishy type range. Let's say he raises the top 25% of hands and limps 25% until 60% of his range. And now let's put in a very loose range with which he is willing to stake off. Any gut shot with a pair. So this might take a while. So 7, and he needs 5, a 4, or 3. The same thing is also possible with an open-ender. So he then change the 7 to a 6. I mean, I think 2 pair are also somewhat reasonable for a fishy player to play like this. I think ATAKA probably made a mistake. What is he doing with sets though? Let's also assume that this is very beneficial for... No. Let's first assume he does it with all the top hands as well, and then remove some, because he's probably not getting maximizing in fold equity and doing this pot size bet with the nuts. So, but we want to now for every scenario what the how we are doing. So, and we also have to include all the sets. 5, 5, 4, 4, 3, 3. Did I miss anything? It's like, I think, let's also assume he does something that is kind of crazy with just the deuce, so with an open-ender and the pair at least. So I think that's quite okay-ish, the range we put in. Yeah. Let's see how we are doing. So 30% only for the ace, ace, 10, 10. And he's having 2 pot size bets left. So this is definitely not a get it in. I mean, even if he has just 1 pot size bet left, it would not be a get it in against this range. Let's say he's only going all in with 3, 3 and 2 pair, and not with the sets, and not with the nut straight, and also not with the second nut straight. Let's see how we are doing now. Even against this range, we could just get it in if we have 1 pot size bet left, but it's 2. So this is a very, very loose stack off, and yeah, I think this is very bad. I mean, my first intuition, I'm not playing that much anymore, but I did a lot of these things in the past, and yeah, I didn't forgot anything in the 1 year I wasn't playing much. So yeah, this is a terrible stack off, but he gets lucky, plays against a hand that is very low in his range. I mean, he could be doing way, way worse and be almost drawing that, needing runner. So yeah, let's continue.
And has 2 over pairs in the backdoor not flush draw, and Hannibal has the middle pair and the open-ended straight draw with the ace king 7 5. At the end of the day, like, both players are not going to get away from their hand on the flop. However,
this is complete bullshit. I think this is completely wrong, and ATAKA should get away with 2 pot size bets left. I mean, what is he talking about? Why shouldn't ATAKA not be able to get away? This is nonsense and insane.
The solver, I ran this hand basically in the solver. The solver would suggest to check call in ATAKA's shoes in order to break the turn, because when Hannibal pots, basically, he's not going to...
I think the simulation he used is probably assuming that Hannibal is having close to optimal range, and this is most likely not the case. I mean, did I put in any assumptions that are that unlikely? And I think I also didn't forgot too many hands, so I think this is just not true. I mean, you can also get bad results from a solver if you put in the wrong assumptions, and I think that's what JNandez probably did. I mean, our results differ a lot, for at least. I would like to see what he put in for this one.
Fold against a jam. It's too much committed in there. So basically, that means that ATAKA is check pushing a non-equity favorite, which is not necessary if there are certain turns that are just going to diminish his equity to almost zero or close to zero against Hannibal's range. So let's say the turn would be a 7 or an 8 or a 6. Then ATAKA can actually just check fold, which would perform overall.
I think against an 8, you probably cannot check fold. I mean, there's almost nothing left then. I mean, I would also, if I go with the hand, I would check raise the flop, as Hannibal is not folding anymore, and I'm not sure. Maybe there might be very few cards on which you can probably fold, like a 6, a deuce, I guess, maybe a 7. But yeah, not many, and you could make very, very huge mistakes if you guess the range of your opponent wrong. I mean, let's make him even more crazy and even put even more favorable assumptions in. So let's say he's doing this with any pair, so with a 4, 5, or 7. But yeah, I think even then it's very close. Even then you got the equity. I think what you need, so 40% or something. So yeah, then you would have the equity, but who is that crazy?
Better than check jamming the flop and then having to still commit because you previously already committed all the chips on a 6, 7, 8 and so on. So you're basically holding a hand which we call turn determined. Like the strength of your hand is highly dependent on the turn.
By the way, you should definitely also check out my second channel. This is this one, Finance with Excel. I produce videos about money, investing, and mainly cryptocurrency so far, but also some general investing topic videos. And yeah, if you're a poker player, if you are interested in money, definitely check this out too. I have a diploma, or let's say a master, to make it more comparable to other degrees in economics as well. So I should know what I'm talking about. But yeah, you can make yourself familiar with my videos and then decide yourself if I know what I'm talking about or not. So, but enough of the advertising for my other channel. Let's get back to the poker action. But it's also like sort of fitting because it's also a crypto poker site. Okay, well, I need to click play
cards
as well.
So for example, on a king, you will stack off. On a 7, you will check fold. And even though it sucks to check fold a 7, it still makes you more money in the long run to check call, check fold on a 7 than getting the money in on the flop. And Hannibal, again, doesn't really look to pot the flop with any part of his range. Thing is, like, when people pot in the spot, they usually end up having this kind of hand way more.
I think he might be off with his assumptions, because I saw many not so good players doing this with nutty hands. So this is a generalization which might sound very, very sophisticated and true on first glance, but in reality, especially if you play against players that are not that great, they often end up having the nuts, if believe it or not.
Often.
Speaking from experience. And yeah, I mean, it could be also a good player who's playing somewhat loose, having some fun, but he understands that the perception of the other guy would be that he is weak potting this spot, and therefore does it with the nuts, assuming that your opponent would think that this is weak because the nuts don't want you to fold. Therefore, he gets it in with aces, although he's drawing that. So I hope you got this. This was maybe a bit weird.
Than an actual straight or a set. And your opponents can obviously read into that in the long run. And maybe ATAKA did read into it. But even if he does read Hannibal as weak, it still makes more sense to check call jam blanks, like a jack, for example, instead of jack jamming the flop already. However, they run it one time and ATAKA gets quote unquote lucky and holds up and wins a nice $330,000 pot.
Although we forgot something in our simulation, I think. Let's add this and see how much better we would be doing. We are very generous, putting 6-6 and 7-7 in as well. So I think it's a bit too much to put in 6-6 and 7-7. I would normally just put in maybe 6-6. Let's see how we are doing against that. Even then, you are not doing great. I mean, it would still be a fold. And if it's only 6-6... I mean, in reality, even if you have 6-6 or 7-7, you often still have the straight. Yeah, not doing that great.
So now we're going to jump into the 5K, 10K games. And we start off with Hannibal, Tony G, and ATAKA. ATAKA sitting on roughly 30 big blinds, sitting there in the small blind, and going for a pot size open raise. Range here pre-flop should be very tight, 20%, 25% of all hands. There should be a lot of limping included given the ante in the middle. Thing is, when you're playing short stack...
Not sure if these dudes know about that, and I think Tony G is not a GTO player, Hannibal isn't too, and as we saw, ATAKA also played sort of questionable, so I doubt that these dudes are using GTO ranges here.
You have to play quite tight ranges before the flop because you are quite close to showdown. So equity matters a lot, basically. Flop is 10-9-5, two-toned. The small blinds range here will...
Again, get your shit together and put in the whole cards. It's very annoying that we don't see them yet.
Will connect pretty good. You will have overpairs and flush draws, overpairs and straight draws with backdoor flush draws, and betting a relatively large bet to kind of pot turn on a blank, for example, is a sensible strategy.
Sounds good.
ATAKA will go ahead and bet, I think something along the lines of 50,000 here.
I think he already watched this one in advance. He must be, because he said he ran sims on the one. I mean, if you put in so much effort for the video, put in the whole cards. I mean, it's not that much editing. And you probably have dudes working for you who could do that, so...
The flop representing a hand that probably wants to go with it. Turn is a 5. The 5 is not really a scary card for it.
5 is not changing too much. It might be bad for some of the draws, which could be drawing that now, facing a big bet.
ATAKA. When Tony calls the flop, it's going to have all sorts of top pair and straight draws and backdoor flush draws, front door flush draws. All those hands are breaking on the turn. And the overpairs, which are well more represented in the small blinds range, are still doing good on a 5. Especially given the stack size, I would see here a pot size bet as a good idea. Let's see what ATAKA goes with. I would say...
Not sure if this pot size bet is actually such a good idea, because if you also want to include some bluffs, you don't necessarily have to bet that big. Yeah. And Tony might be feeling sort of loose, and you don't need to bet pot to get him off a flush draw on the turn. I think, at least. Or, I mean, if he has like 9 Jack Queen, is he not folding if he's only facing 2/3? I think he's folding still. He might even fold against half pot.
Pot size bet is kind of the standard on a 5, given the size of the pot in relation to the stacks. But ATAKA thinks differently. And then Tony goes for the pot size bet on the turn. So if Tony is representing a strong hand on the turn on a 5, I think the proper strategy would be to bet small shove river. because he's basically saying he has a 5 for the most part.
Yeah, okay, he's using the same logic again, like in the hand before, but yeah, this could also be a leveling war. Like, Tony knows that ATAKA probably perceives this as a weak bet, and therefore he's betting big to get him to get it in with like kings, but in reality Tony has a 5 or something like that. So but maybe I'm overthinking the spot.
Hard, which doesn't mind to get weaker hands along, and is looking to spread out his value hands, his polarized range essentially over turn and river. Similar idea to like the last hand where I talked about the importance of spreading out your bets over multiple streets when you have the positional advantage, especially if you can still get all the money in the middle by betting smaller. So this is a quite unconventional sizing. Let's have a look what ATAKA is going to do. It almost feels like a all-in or full situation because ATAKA has not that much more left in his stack. But we will learn here in a moment that ATAKA will actually find a call, and river is an ace, 69.
I mean, it could make sense to just call. I mean, if ATAKA thinks that his opponent is not having him drawing dead yet, and he's having some sort of draw which he does not want to give up on, but which he thinks he can still fold river for 70k more, then this line could actually make sense. I mean, yeah, he definitely has no fold equity if he's shoving with a draw on turn.
$1,000 behind.
Oh, it would be very
536,000 in the middle. And ATAKA goes for a check. And Tony checks back and actually ends up winning with king.
Big one. I think ATAKA is not holding this one on the river. Because, yeah, jacks could be good. Tony's play, I mean, is it ambitious or is it not? I mean, I think he just wanted to end the hand against all the drawing type hands. I think a lot of these would just get away anyways. And by the way, I also think ATAKA would be better off shoving turn because he could dominate draws with his hand. Because, yeah, even if his opponent is having like a draw and top pair, or like 2-pair with the 2-5s, if he has like a 10 and 9 in a draw, then he's dominating this. So I wouldn't hate if he check jammed the turn, because I don't see any river on which he could get away. I mean, no. On which one should he get away? There's just none. And his opponent was committed, and he could have weaker hands. So yeah, I think check jamming turn with the actual hand seems better. Not sure if there are some range considerations in there. I mean, he saved 70k, but he wouldn't even be doing that worse on the turn, right? I mean, Lap makes him rich. Some of the straight cards are good for him. Jack is also good. I mean, a king is not great. But other than that, yeah. Do we have any comments? Still no comments. Let's continue with the video.
So ATAKA's bet on the flop is completely standard. On the turn, he just wants to pot and commit. There's no reason to check at this high of at this low of an SPR. And Tony's decisions are also interesting. So on the first street pre-flop, he should just 3-bet, given that ATAKA basically has 30 big blinds and on a blind on blind situation.
Yeah, this is very bad pre-flop. Tony should he 3-bet? I mean, he has no suit. But even in a GTO world, this might be enough. But we have this tool also sold by JNandez, where we can find out if this is a jam or not. I mean, he probably looked it up anyways, but we will still find out. Oops. Shit. Okay, sorry for that. Fold. Raise, download. Let's see. King, queen 8, I think it is. It's king, queen 8, rainbow. King, queen 8. Maybe Tony G is a GTO player. I mean, it has to be close with a rainbow version. With one suit, it's easy. Yeah, look at this. Okay, Solver seems to be a bit undecided. The EV is very close together, so not a big mistake to call.
Your King Queen 8 is going to play really well in a 3-bet pot, given how shallow the pot will be, or stack the pot ratio in a 3-bet pot at 30 big blinds. And then as played, I mean, the flop call is okay. Seems to be hard to just let this one go in the flop with some future blockers and the pocket kings. But against the value range, he's not going to do extraordinarily well on the flop. But anyway, turn seems unconventional to just like bet this large and commit, but I don't think it's necessarily bad. It was just strange that ATAKA wasn't betting himself, and I wonder if ATAKA would pot the turn if Tony would ever fold. Probably not, but it's an interesting hand nevertheless. So in our next hand, ATAKA on the button. It's going to raise it up to full pot. I talked about raise size preferences and anti-games in prior videos. Make sure to check them out or learn more about it in the PLO Mastermind, plmastermind.com. And we see a fold from Tony, a call from Hannibal. Flop is 9 for deuce. This is a pretty good board for ATAKA because overpairs aren't as afraid on this board.
I think it's not too bad for any of these guys because your button probably has a wide range. And the big blind as well, because he gets a discount for defending his blind. So yeah, both can have something, but yeah, it's very unlikely that someone has a big hand here.
To be beat by 2-pair or sets. And given how small the stack to pot ratio is, dividing up your bet size into like a large and a small sizing is quite decent. It's a quite good strategy because certain hands, for example, bear aces with like a 4 blocker, for example, they're good enough to commit all their stack, but they don't necessarily want to invite mediocre hands to come along because they have a hard time realizing equity on turns given their pro playability. And in this case, we see ATAKA.
By the way, I got a video with the biggest pot ever played. This is also on Coin Poker. And yeah, check this one out as well if you like this video so far.
Potting the flop and then stacking off on the turn, and he ends up having ace, ace.
What happened here? What? ATAKA has ace, ace without a blocker. I mean, he's blocking a heart. This, oh, okay, he's blocking a 9. So this, his flop play is okay. Let's say. What the fuck happened on the flop? Did he just, did he simply call a pot size bet?
But they don't necessarily want to invite mediocre hands to come along because they have a hard time realizing equity on turns.
I mean, why the fuck are you calling
turns given their pro playability? And in this case, we see ATAKA potting the flop and then stacking off on the turn, and he ends up having...
Yeah, this is quite a bad play. Should not continue with just an open-ender on the flop. And on the turn, he picks up additional equity, so he decides his hand now has to call anyways, and therefore he can just ship it in from the front, hoping that his opponent folds something. I think he probably folds nothing, but yeah, this is also quite transparent. So calling the flop with sort of a hand he shouldn't call with, and then he didn't improve but shoves anyways because he's committed. Yeah, this was not played well by Hannibal.
Ace, ace, king 9, which is basically an overpair and a pair blocker, and this is actually a good hand to do this with. Like, this is a hand that the solver would approve of just potting on the flop and then going with it.
I think he's not that objective because he's taking, I mean, he's already giving us a good idea about what is going to happen, and he watched it beforehand. And so he's biased.
If you want to play a 2-bet size approach, which is probably a good idea given the small stack to pot ratio. It's kind of similar to a 3-bet pot spot, where in a 3-bet pot at SPR 3.5, you want to use a small sizing like half pot or 1/3 pot or 40% of the pot with a more polarized range, and then a potting bet size with your bear overpair, so to speak, especially on boards where your opponents...
But isn't that quite exploitative too? I mean, you cannot just do it with pair over pairs, because your opponent could read you very well in this instance. So you have to mix in some strong stuff too, and I'm pretty sure the solver would do this.
Distribution of 2 pairs and sets is quite low, like 9-4 deuce. Hannibal shows up with a little bit of a creative call pre-flop with the 8-7-5-3. It is not a hand you want to defend with.
It's also a creative call on the flop.
But flops really well. He flops a wrap and a backdoor flush draw. Actually,
where is he having a wrap? Is he drunk?
He doesn't flop a wrap. He flops an open and a straight draw and a backdoor flush draw. So I guess against the pot size bet, this seems quite questionable. Then turns a flush draw on a queen and gets the money in. I mean, on the turn, what are you going to do? But pre-flop and on the flop, you know, we're definitely in questionable territory.
Opium to territory. Something like that. I mean, he's rich. He's according to chat log, which someone posts somewhere.
Territory here, but it works out because the river is a deuce of diamonds and Hannibal takes down a pretty nice $684,000 pot. So for this one, we're going to switch back to the small stakes, 2K, 4K. I don't want to bore you guys with mini pots here and micro stakes, but this ends up being a pretty interesting hand. We see a raise by Tony on the button to $19,000, $6,000 3 bet from the small blind Hannibal.
I mean, I guess Tony G has some covered. Not that important for you to see the size, right? I mean, it's the 600 something K, but yeah, he has him covered. That's all you need to know. So a raise and a re-raise
is the aggressor, and then Tony is making the call. Flop is 10-7 deuce with 3 diamonds. Again,
I wonder what bet size will be used from these guys. I mean, they are supposed to bet small, but not sure if these guys know about this.
And the stack to pot ratio is very small.
Kind of tilting. Okay, that's decent bet sizing. Maybe even a little bit too small for my taste.
Here, Tony with the stab versus check. Hannibal with the call.
Yeah, will get called a lot
and
by
turn
using
9.
this sizing.
Hannibal with the...
And 9 is somewhat dangerous if Tony just took a step and his opponent called with some sort of gut shot or wrap or straight draw. Because a 9, yeah, makes some hands get there.
Check. 1.5 SPR.
Yeah, Tony's setting it up for a nice river shove.
Pretty large bet by Tony. Basically saying, I'm going to jam river frequently and you have to play for stacks. Hannibal calls one more time.
Can he pull the trigger?
And the river breaks off on a 5 of hearts. All in.
Pulls the trigger. Does not need to be good that often. Let's see if he can make the call.
By Tony G and call by Hannibal $800,000. And he bluffs. Nope. Oh.
Okay, Tony has nuts. What am I even doing here? Let's try. How do I do this? Now you can see. Oh, now you can see. Ching, Tony. Not flash like the fish like to call, but yeah, no way any one of these dudes can get away.
Tony has the nuts, flop the nut flush.
I mean, Hannibal even was like tricky trappy and probably thought that he is soon be winning an 800k board, but yeah, this didn't work out as planned.
And Hannibal has the second nut flush. So first of all, the money will always go in here. There's no reason Hannibal should try to get away from his hand. The better question or more interesting question is, should Hannibal bet the flop himself or not? And the main way you're going to think about this is you want to think about, are you blocking your opponent's continues on the flop by holding, for example, a 10 or a 7 or...
I didn't look at any sims, but I think his 9 was definitely fine, and you should probably play some part of your kings like this.
8-9, because those are the main hands that will float you on the flop when you bet something like 20% of the pot. And then also another thing to consider is, how likely is it that your opponent has a high diamond that will turn themselves into a bluff? So for example, let's say Hannibal has a hand like ace, king of diamonds, the ace of diamonds and the king of diamonds. It's a very bad hand to check because you're not allowing your opponent to have one of the high diamond blockers that will bluff you. So an ace king a diamond hand, for example, would be much more of a hand where you have high incentives of betting. King, king, jack 4, I would say, is a little bit more in between. You're unblocking a jack of diamonds and a queen of diamonds, which either could be used for value when Tony has the queen high flush or the jack high flush, which probably the money will go in anyway, given that the stack to pot ratio in the flop is quite shallow.
I mean, he's only arguing from a looks like an exploitative approach. I mean, you also need to think about our range and our range construction, as we don't want to be exploitable, at least in theory. Not sure if this is that important in this game.
Shallow. But also he's unblocking the 8, 9, 10, 7, 6. So I would say that in Hannibal's shoes, I would probably just go for the bet on the flop, turn and river, instead of going for check call. But as played, there's no way to get...
Very annoying, nothing to drink here, but I will get through this with being thirsty for you guys. I hope you appreciate that.
Get away from this hand, and Tony just wakes up on the better side of the coin for this hand, $800,000 to Mr. Tony G. All right, so this is going to be an interesting and fun hand. We have a 3x open by EP, Chatta, 2K, 4K, 1K, and Hannibal in the mix with the 3-bet from the small blind, sitting on about 100 big blinds, almost exactly. Although because there's an ante, you need to account for that and basically make the stacks a little bit shallower in relation to the blinds. We do see a 4-bet, in case you didn't catch this, by Chatta. So Chatta basically saying, I got aces or some sort of very strong hand like ace king.
Ooh, this looks like Chatta has caught a good flop, at least. Very good one for his range.
King, king maybe. Flop is ace high, ace jack 5. 2 spades, Hannibal checks. He has 254,000 left, so slightly below pot. And Chatta obviously is going to have sometimes kings and spades, but usually pocket aces. Hannibal with the line. The book says to call. Well, it's time to upgrade from the books to the solver. Especially when you look at the hand in a moment. But I'm not feeling it, he says. Okay.
Let's see what he got.
Well,
probably a flush draw.
Tony goes with the advice. Play by the book. Here's the call. 800k in the middle. Hannibal has the...
What? Not sure if his book is not the best one. I think he probably should still get away with this one. He should all. This is also not a 3-bet, by the way. So he put himself in a bad spot by making a 3-bet. I mean, this could be a 3-bet when double suited, but no way it is single suited. He still has quite a lot of equity against. I mean, he might be even right, but the book says to call. But I think probably not. He's not having 33%, and his opponent probably has aces quite a lot. And even if he has not the aces, he has like ace, king, queen, or something like that, also blocking tons of his outs. So yeah, I think he could probably still fold. I mean, it's close for sure. You also, can we get this situation? What was the 800k? I mean, this is like 40 BB or something again. And it was 200, 100, 500, 100, 200. I'm not sure what it was. Let's just look into what it actually was. What were the blinds? What happened here? So we start with this. So it's 2k, 4k. So it's 100 BB deep. with antes. And let's just... We cannot ask the solver about this thing. Let's see. Can get something similar done. So this is also not an UTG race, right? I think there's one guy not at the table, so it's like this. And he 3-bets, gets 4-bet. And calls. Board is ace, jack 5. Ace, jack 3 is as good as this one with flush draw. Okay. Let's see how he's doing here. Yeah, that's quite similar. So let's download the sim. He's supposed to check basically always. That's also what he did. So check. So he's facing an all-in. He's supposed to call 40% of the time. Is he supposed to call with... What was his end? Jack 10, Queen 8. With the backdoor flush draw. So he has diamonds and hearts. Otherwise, it's probably not a 3-bet hand. Oh, this was... oops. Put it in the wrong field. So let's see. Yeah, it's still supposed to fold, as I suspected. So his book is telling lies.
It's not supposed to 3-bet before the flop. And if you see a flop, like, unfortunately, you have to fold. I mean, the hand looks kind of nice on the flop, but you'll...
Yeah, okay, Jane is also confirming my theory. And yeah, we also got the solver who's saying that, so easy game.
also have to realize your opponent's going to show up with ace.
I mean, it could be, in theory, a different situation if Hannibal was going wild and very crazy with 3-bets and getting 4-bet lighter. But even then, I think it's probably still, in most cases, still a fold.
Ace too often. The weakest hand your opponent's going to have will be ace, king, king. But you will run into a mix of aces mostly, and then sometimes like double suited kings with spades, for example. So looking here at 23%, backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw options. The 8 helps a little bit, but at the end of the day, it doesn't catch a 9 or a king by the river and loses an 800k pot. All right, let's get back to the big boy stakes. 5k, 10k, 2k ante. We get Tony the man limping in the cutoff, which is not necessarily a bad strategy. Omaha for rolls with the 3x ISO. So the reason that it is fine to open limp in the cutoff is because there's antes in the middle. There are antes in the middle, and because of that, you want to try to extend your range in some ways. And you can do this by raising smaller or limping or a combination of both. I like the 3x ISO from Omaha, allowing himself to basically just like not overinvest himself by going for a pot size raise and then risking, you know, like 51,000 or something along those lines. And at the same time, he builds a nice pot with probably the stronger range.
Omaha for rolls, also a legend. It's Omaha for rolls guy. Not sure how his real name is.
Against Tony in position. All right, so ATAKA calls in the big blind, obviously getting a really good price as well. And Tony is in a chatty mood.
I mean, this very small ISO raise is kind of fishy. I don't know if he's doing this always. But it is definitely strange. Also seems like Omaha for rolls does not know that Hannibal is also not the greatest player, and he thinks that Tony G is the spot of the table, therefore sits in this position.
About to make the call.
And he might be right, actually.
Oh, there we go.
I mean, so far we saw quite fishy plays from all of the guys. I mean, not from Omaha for rolls, but from the other 3 dudes involved.
All right, so 100,000 in the middle. Flop is 5-4 deuce. Certainly a board that isn't that great for Omaha or Tony. The big blind could have 2 pairs and
I mean, it's not that great for anybody, to be honest.
sets, but these limping ranges, like the limp call range, mainly has big pairs in there. Like the weaker kind of kings and queens, and then Omaha for rolls, obviously.
I'm not sure if you can duck the range in this way with Tony G, who might be playing quite different than you think.
Aces or high cards or high rundowns, and ATAKA should have a leading range here with some part of his range. Maybe like half pot is reasonable. But it is Tony, which I would claim that Tony has the weakest range on this board, but he goes out with a bet, which is not necessarily wrong or
Not sure if he actually has the weakest range.
bad, but I think overall it's easier to just check your entire range in Tony's shoes because he's just not going to connect to the board very well. But chooses to bet, and Omaha rolls with a pretty quick call. Turn is 3 of hearts, so the flush completes. Tony checks rather quick. Stat pot ratio of 2 behind. Rivers is 6.
Right on the board. Let's see how this ends up.
So both players check on the turn. Obviously, nut flush or ace high flush and straight flushes are possible. Tony now with a small bet on the river.
Sort of, yeah, block bet type-ish hand. Maybe to see a sheep showdown. I mean, that's what the live pros often do.
Slightly over third. Goes for 80k. Basically saying I got a flush, but my flush might not be that good. And Omaha rolls rips it all in. And he's now saying, look, I checked back on the turn with a ace high flush, or
yeah, he must have checked back with an ace high flush, or he might read Tony's hand as a weakness, or maybe could even be like he has like a queen high flush, wants to pot control against like a very small river bet. He thinks that he can shove for value, and Tony might call with weaker hands. This would be very, very sick if this was his thinking.
I'm value raising the river thin, reading into the sizing, and Tony has a decision to make now. In terms of the pricing, let's have a look. 710 in the middle. He needs to...
My guess is that he has something decent and is not bluffing Tony G, but what do I know? We will see in soon, unless Tony folds.
To call another 320,000, even more than that, 330,000. That is a real, that's a real raise there.
Seems
and
like
basically
Tony does
Tony
not have
calls,
the
we will
nuts,
see a $1 million pot.
He is
and
tanking.
Boy, it will not be the last one.
Or is he slow rolling? Is he trying to get him on tilt?
So Tony with the tank. Tick tock, tick tock. It's a big call. You're already thinking, is Omaha rolls going to check back the turn at SBR2 with the ace high flush? Or is he value jamming in a king high flush on the river against my 80k sizing? Also, sometimes you just bet small and feel like you induced your opponent to attack your small sizing. But at the end of the day, we also have to consider that Tony G was...
Oh, I want to see the hand. Stop talking.
Betting the flop into 3 players and not 2. I mean, not into 3, but in a 3-way pot. And that is going to strengthen Omaha rolls calling range for sure on the flop. Okay, we see a call. And Tony shows up with the queen high flush. Omaha rolls with the king high flush.
Okay. I was right that someone has a queen high flush, but it's Tony. Yeah, but I was also right that Omaha rolls is probably not bluffing and that Tony G is not folding flushes. Yeah. I think it's reasonable played by both guys.
$1 million to Omaha rolls. Nice value.
And it looks like the projection about Tony's calling range was correct. I mean, he looked at the hand in advance, so it wasn't that easy to predict that weak pairs are in there, weak, medium, or high pairs.
Jam on the river. Tony, in terms of removal effects, like not amazingly good if you consider that he is, I mean, he is holding a flush, obviously, but he's also holding a 3, which isn't ideal, and he's also holding a club, which isn't ideal. Like, he probably wants Omaha for rolls to have something like ace 3, for example, with the ace of hearts or the king of hearts that turns themselves into a bluff on the river. Probably wants Omaha for rolls to have backdoor clubs with aces pre-flop that floated the flop and then turns themselves into a bluff on the river. For example, a hand like ace, I don't know, queen 3, let's say, that is going to, with backdoor clubs, that is going to call the flop, obviously because it doesn't necessarily want to get the money in on the flop already.
Yeah, I mean, depends how Tony thinks, but I assume that he wasn't having a hard time folding any river because he basically wrote his hand in the chat already and said, okay, I'm not that strong, I'm checking the turn, and on the river he was like, okay, I want a sheep showdown, so I bet smallish. So yeah, and Tony is someone who is very suspicious, so I think he's probably not folding any flush here. But yeah, don't know that much about his game, just watched a few YouTube videos.
Then on the turn, turns to straight, check. On the river, turns it into a bluff, something along those lines. The removal effects are not ideal in Tony's shoes, but it's not a massive deal. But also he definitely, I think, read into this sizing thing, you know, like he bets small on the river, faces a jam, and feels like he sort of induced this upon him himself. And Omaha rolls with a nice read, reading into the sizing correctly, and then value jamming the king high flush. I think the reason Omaha rolls checked on the turn was because he felt like he could be behind, but then on the river read into the sizing tell and jammed for value without the nuts, and gets rewarded with $1 million. So pretty nice pot. Going to finish up this episode of the Coin Poker action. In the next episode, we will see multiple $1 million pots, actually multi-million-dollar pots, including HannibalGetya and all the usual suspects. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe to see the following updates, and also hit.
Oh, there's another episode of this. Pretty sure I didn't review that. I think I reviewed one of these. Not sure if I already looked into this one. I will check it out. Or maybe just do it a second time now. I hope this is not happening. Yeah, this was quite fun. Thanks for watching. Yeah, consider, if you want to push your game to the next level, consider to check out any of the affiliate links I got in the description. Yeah, like, subscribe, all the good YouTube things. Yeah, follow me if you want to learn more about PLO and poker and gambling in general. I put a lot of content out there for free. Yeah. And also don't forget about my second channel. Yeah. Bye bye. Until next time.